Awesome. Good morning, Facebook. It's Terry here, back in for our Tuesday chats. And this morning, I've got Kelly Patterson with me. Now, Kelly and I, we're known each other a couple of years now, I guess.
I'd say it's been a while.
Yeah. So Kelly lives in the beautiful Lockyer Valley, not very far from where we used to be, and not very far from where we are now, because I didn't move very far when I did move. Kelly, would you like to please share with people who you are and what you do? Because there's be a whole bunch of people who watch this who probably don't even know that you exist, honestly, at this point.
So I am a workplace health and safety consultant. So what that means is I work for companies who are maybe smaller or don't have the resources or time or whatever it might be that they're struggling with to help them implement safety documentation, I suppose, is the nutshell version of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So just while we're chatting today, if anyone wants to ask Kelly some questions or make some comments, I have got my phone set up over here, so I'm actually monitoring the chat. So if you drop any questions in there, there'll be a bit of delay because of just tech stuff, but let us, I'll keep an eye on it and can ask Kelly questions for you. So Kelly, have you got a particular area that you work in, or is it like, are there particular industries that you prefer to work with?
I tend to stick with trades and construction, cleaners. I've done a couple of labs, but I mean, depending on what it is, I may or may not take it on if it's sort of if it's something that I know how to do. But yeah, typically I would say trades and construction is probably my primary area of expertise.
Yeah. And I guess too that when you've got that niche, that you would make you that much more efficient, and so therefore cost effective for the people that you're working with too, because you've got so much prior industry knowledge of that particular space.
Exactly, there's less time. Like reading legislation is obviously really time consuming, and you sort of have to decipher it and translate it and then work out how it applies to any given industry or work type. So taking on a different industry is a lot more work. And just all that research, whereas having done so much work in the trade and construction industry, I do think that I'm quite familiar with the legislation there.
Awesome. So any tradies who don't have their health and safety documents up and sorted definitely need to have a chat with you, don't they?
Especially if they're doing high risk work or have staff. And the thing I think that's really important to know is that I do not work for the government. So even if you've sort of got to the stage where you're a bit embarrassed or feel like, oh, I really should have done this 2 years ago, that's okay. There's no time like the present, to get on top of it. Give me a call. There's no judgment or anything like that. We'll just help where you need to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there businesses like yours that are government based, where you said before that you don't work for the government? Because like the legislation in and around safety and construction is not my area of expertise. Please educate me.
Obviously, each state has a regulator, and that would be in Queensland, WorkSafe Queensland, which what they do is they basically regulate the implementation of the legislation. So you can look for advice and questions as well. I do think they're probably, because they issue the fines as well, people tend to be a little bit scared to approach them, but they are helpful, and they do, they have the same goal where they do want people to be safe. They obviously run their government, it's a government agency, and their job is basically to enforce the legislation as well. So they're the ones that if you have an incident, they'll come out and do the investigation, and then they would be asking you for all of your documents to prove that you have a safe work culture in place. So documentation really is kind of backing up that you are working safely, and it's there to prove that that's what you're doing. So that's sort of the state-based setup. And then there is a large government organisation called Safe Work Australia, and they are basically an informational organisation. So they don't enforce legislation, but they do provide a lot of information, and you'll find a lot of resources and help there. So they've got a website, Safe Work Australia, and you can go, if you just Google it, it will come up, and you can get information there. But they do refer back to the states a lot because some of the states in Australia have different legislation. So, for example, Victoria has different work health and safety legislation, and so does WA. Neither of those is on the Harmonised Act, although in saying that, WA has updated theirs effective January. So if you're in WA watching this, you have a big update coming up.
Do you work primarily with Queensland construction businesses then? Do you often do anything for interstate?
I work interstate all the time. So I know the different states, and actually probably most of my clients are in New South Wales and Victoria, and then probably Queensland. So those 3 states I probably work in the most, but I've always worked nationally. So it's just a matter of knowing how the legislation applies in each state. And obviously the codes of practice, there's some differences. A code of practice is sort of under the legislation as a practical guide that you have to comply with. So yeah, again, those are available on the regulator websites for each state.
Yeah. So those people who are watching this, if you know someone who's in the construction industry, particularly those who are business owners, tag them, make sure that they are aware, particularly like, as you said, for WA businesses who have got big legislation changes coming. So that's going to mean then big reviews of safety practices and safety guidelines, I guess. They need to chat to Kelly or someone like Kelly, but Kelly would be a great place to start. So Kelly, what is it that brought you to here? Like, how long ago did you start OHS Compliance Solutions?
It's coming up for 3 years that I've been working for myself. But before that, I did the same thing. So I did consulting, and I actually I started in safety because I got a job where it was an entry level, well, it wasn't supposed to be an entry level job, but they really liked my personality. So I was very, very lucky because I got trained into it, and it was auditing contractors doing the work. So tradies basically working on a particular client's sites to ensure they're complying. And then that was traveling around Australia. And when I had my son, who's now 10, I didn't want to travel anymore. So that just became, it was sort of obviously choosing between staying home with the kids and being away. And I just chose to stay home. That was my choice at that time. And so that's how I sort of did a side shift into, well, if I can't travel around and see if these businesses have stuff in place, maybe I could help them get it in place. And I was lucky enough to get a job doing that from home. So it enabled me to be home with my kids. And then, I guess I had a couple of other businesses in the meantime, like hobby businesses, nothing to do with safety. And so I just, I guess, decided that I would bring this into doing it for myself. And I have, aligning the business with my core values and running a really honest and integrity-based business, and always holding my clients' requirements at the highest, the highest need. So I guess that's a long answer.
No, that's perfect, because there's so much that about how we get to where we are in terms of the journey that's brought us to this point today, and the business that we've created and why we've done that. And I think, although like in some ways it helps to highlight the uniqueness of us as individuals and why we do what we do. So I think it's important to share that, in that it doesn't need to be, front page on your website, but I think it's something important that people get to understand that stuff about you.
And I think the other thing for me too is the fact that I'm really down to earth and easygoing. And a lot of people that work in safety, you just don't come across that a lot. Typically. And so when I was auditing, I got told that a lot, that, people felt like they were comfortable with me and they could approach me and ask me questions. And so that's something that I've really brought into this business as well, is being approachable and people feeling safe with me, I suppose, that, they'll get the right advice, but also in a nice way. And I guess I really am just kind of a bogan chick myself, maybe. So I'm to tradies, and it just works well, I suppose.
Yeah, that's cool. What do you love most about the work that you get to do now with your business?
What I love about it now, I think, is that when I work, because I mostly work with business owners, so they're typically small trade business owners from maybe 0 to 20 staff, usually around that size, maybe bigger. They do have some bigger clients, but on average. And because you're working with the owners, you really get to see that when they come to me, they're quite often pulling their hair out with frustration because they don't understand what they need to do. And my goal is to get them to kind of go, oh, safety is achievable. I can have these documents, you know, it's actually manageable. So I think that's my favorite thing, is just seeing people feel empowered to be able to take that into their business and be better.
Yeah.
Cover their butts. You know, I don't want anybody to be out there at risk of a fine or things that they're risking by not having the paperwork in place. It's quite a high risk in terms of you could lose your business, and that's, nobody wants that, all the hard work, you know, that you put in to build a business just for the sake of not being able to prove something, when we can develop a way to make it easy to maintain the paperwork.
Yeah, it's so important. And having so my dad, as you know, is in the agricultural industry, and having talked to him about, you know, people who didn't have just exactly the right boxes ticked and then had a situation come up, and the impact on their business because their safety documentation was not like completely spot on.
Yep, that's
was
right.
Massive.
Hard to, because you don't know what you don't know. So, you know, I have a lot of tradies ring me that have, for example, a tip truck that's over 4.5 tons. So then the National Heavy Vehicle legislation comes into play for them as well. And they don't realise that because they're not a transport company. So you've got to really talk to someone who knows what might apply so that you can get that right information and know what you need to do. Whereas, if you don't know those little things, how would you know where to begin, I guess? Farming and ag, I don't really do. That's a very, very challenging industry on its own. And I think I would say to anyone in that industry, engage someone who specialises in that industry. Because it's, farming, it's like construction, I guess. It has all of its own things.
There's a little bit of construction, and there's a little bit of a heavy vehicle. There's a little bit of everything in the farming industries.
That's right. And working with animals too, so they're quite high risk. It's interesting. I typically stay away from farming. I like construction.
A little bit more predictable.
I know it, so I guess that's just stick to it. You know, sometimes.
That's cool. What is it that you don't love about what you do, or don't like about the business?
This is such a loaded question, because you'll get me on a rant, but there are some things I don't love, and it's not necessarily about my business. It's more about the industry as a whole, or safety as a whole, and probably I do feel that in some ways we've lost sight a little bit of what it's about. So I know that there's a lot of people out there that I think their heart's in the right place in terms of wanting everyone to be safer, but the way they go about things, or the way the requests that I get, I'll say from some client, like some of my clients, that they need to put in place, where it's not even. An example I can give you is wearing a hard hat when there's no risk of overhead things falling on your head. Like, you're just doing things for the sake of it when it doesn't really make anyone safer. And a lot happens a lot in safety, where people sort of don't actually understand safety. So what they do is they put all this extra stuff into place to be safer. But what are you protecting someone from? If there's no risk of anything falling on their head, why do they have to wear a hard hat? So it's not asking the right questions in that way. And it's happened a lot in the industry. So that does frustrate me a lot, because we need to remember that safety is supposed to be practical and achievable. It's not supposed to be just about paperwork. And the other thing is the fact that, and this is probably from a general perspective, is that people have become so, and it probably feeds on from that, people have become so focused on the paperwork, they forget that safety is about people. So when you're doing safety in your business, it's actually about consulting with your staff and talking to each other and working out the safest way to do things. And your staff are your biggest resource, so ask them like, how can we do this safer? Do you have any concerns? Do you need any equipment? It's not just about putting a policy in place to tick the box and then saying to your staff, here's this policy. You know, it's about a back and forth kind of activity where and consultation is a big part of the legislation, but I just feel like in a practical sense, it just gets completely skipped a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Because we're so worried about putting the paperwork in place, we forget about the people, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely it does. Yeah, because and it is something that I've you know, in my very small, you know, interaction with this whole safety side of things, there's definitely some times where, you know, there are particular businesses that just, like you said, hard hats when there's no risk of falling objects and stuff. Why? Then you end up at higher risk of like sunburn, because you don't have typically you don't have the protective brim on a hard hat that you'll have on a standard hat.
Yep.
So yeah,
and there's of, you know, for example, with COVID, and I probably shouldn't bring this up because it's COVID, but
it's a little bit controversial.
Wearing masks. Now, if the mask puts you at risk because of the nature of your job, you don't actually have to wear it doing your job. But I've had cases of employers trying to push this issue because they're so scared of the consequences of COVID. But there is provision in the legislation where, you know, it's what's reasonably practicable. So you have to remember that if the mask creates more risk, don't wear it. If you're wearing gloves, but your equipment is spinny, that could rip your hand off. Don't wear them. So exactly that. If it creates more risk, you should be really considering the additional risks placed or created by whatever the control is that you're putting into. So I think we can apply that across the board, you know, and a lot of people forget that too. So yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? But yeah, applying what's relevant and necessary is so important in everything. Tell me something. What's your dream business look like? What's the ultimate goal with what you're working on right now?
I think what I really want is people to know that there's a place they can go to get advice that is sound. You know, it suits their situation. It's still affordable from a small business perspective, and I guess just feel comfortable, because I want people to know that safety is achievable. So for me, yeah, the business can be so big that I'm the go-to, I suppose, that my business is where people go because they know that we're good.
Yeah, I do like that.
Yeah.
Do like that. Now, I have seen a couple of posts that you've done up lately where you're using your business to help support Movember.
Yes.
Tell me about that. Why that choice?
Because I think obviously there's a lot of amazing causes out there, and I do care about quite a few different things. But I like Movember because I think a lot of my clients are tradies, so it's like another way to support my clients in that way. You know, I have a husband who sometimes has challenges of his own, and I just think it's an amazing cause, and I love that men's mental health is getting more and more discussed. And I think I love the concept of Movember as well. I think it's really cool way to raise funds. So obviously I grow a moustache, but I do the walk, the 60 Ks, and so I've signed up for that again this year. And then I just a whole heap of funny like pictures of me with fake moustaches. Just I'm a bit crazy.
That'd be perfect for going through all those filters on you know, FaceTime and stuff. Get yourself some additional Mo images. So do you put a challenge out to your clients as well for them to join you with Movember?
I haven't put a challenge out for them to walk, although walking is good for your health. So I really like that as well. It's not kind of this, I guess, you know, trying to do research for cancer, for example, but selling cupcakes, which is almost sugary, promoting it. But whereas walking is healthy, and so you're it's good for your mental health. It aligns, I suppose, with what the cause is trying to promote. Although I'm happy for anyone to donate it, and if anyone wants to walk and sign up, then go for it. I definitely haven't promoted in that way, just more of a asking for donations and do my Ks.
So how does the walk work? Is it that you commit to walking 60 Ks over the month, or is it a one big walk at some point?
No, it's 60 Ks over the month, which is better for me as well.
Yeah.
Last year when I had an ear infection, and I didn't start walking until midway through the month, and my ear infection right at the start of November, and so I had to do 60 Ks in like 2 weeks, and it was really challenging. And there's so many times where I just want to sort of go, oh, I just can't get this done, but it's a good metaphor for things. You just push through and keep going, and I did achieve it. With one morning I got up at 4 and went for a 12K walk, and then I think the second last day, because I still had 19 Ks to go. So it just shows, if you put your mind to stuff and work hard at it, you can get it done instead of giving up.
Absolutely, especially when there's a deadline that's put in place.
Exactly.
Either one that you've enforced for yourself, or is put on you, like you said with November. Obviously it's got to be done by the 30th.
Yes.
So that's well done. Good on you.
Trying to organise this year and just do it in smaller chunks. And I don't get out every day because of where we live. There's nowhere to walk locally, so I have to drive. But you can always make time to go for a walk. So
So it's the 9th of November right now. How are you going for your kilometres at the moment?
I've done 8, something like that.
Awesome.
Too bad, but still I should be averaging 2 a day comfortably, probably on averaging 1 a day, but still it's better than nothing. And
you can always do another 12K walk at the end if you need to. You've proven that you can do that.
Poor dog, he was like, he kept, when we got to the end, so we got to like 11 Ks and he just kept laying on the ground, and I was dragging him along. Come on, mate, we're nearly there. So he was just doing what I felt like doing.
Yeah, poor old Pooch.
But
you've walked a long way when your dog wants to give up.
That's right.
Yeah. One last question before we wrap up for the day. What's your biggest tip that you'd like to share with people? Like, just about anything, whether it's life, business, work, the universe, all things.
Oh my goodness. Something that I really love to say is I love the concept of thoughts are things. So whatever we think about and whatever our mind is sort of, whether it's positive or negative, they become things. So I'm really big into if you try to change your thought patterns, that whatever we're thinking about is what gets created in our life. So, if you keep saying, oh, I always feel so sick, or I always feel this or that, it doesn't matter if it's negative or positive, that's what you're creating. So I guess my biggest tip is, what are you thinking about?
I love that. Absolutely love it. I was actually where I had the retreat just on the last weekend. I spent a lot of time talking about that with the clients that were there. So
it's a really cool concept, because I think you don't realise how much we can mentally focus on something, and it's not always easy just to change your mind around, but if you can start to, I guess, raise some awareness of those thoughts even initially, and go, oh, hang on, is that something that I want to create in my life? How can I reframe that into a positive? So instead of saying, oh, I'm always sick, say, oh, I'm working towards health, I'm looking forward to being healthy, like just to try and think the word health instead of the word sick.
Even just the wording. One of the discussions that we actually had at the retreat was a lady who was talking about how she'd had to struggle her whole life, and she has had lots of challenges, but changing and she had been working really hard on rearranging that mindset and like challenging that paradigm and rearranging how her subconscious works so that she could sort of progress more easily. And we talked about just substituting the word challenge for the word struggle, like to not use struggle anymore, because its implications are negative and deflating, whereas a challenge implies that, oh, I can get into this, I can like sink my teeth in and I can beat this thing, and I can overcome and I can progress. So even little things like that can make such a massive difference.
And I think it feels more achievable then, instead of like this kind of destitute, like, oh, I'm just stuck with this, things the way they are and I can't change anything. So you're exactly right. Changing that one word, it just becomes so much more empowering instead of being stuck somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really helped me a lot, just that little thing, and really considering, you know, I guess this is what you do, but where do you want to go, and what outcomes do you want? And obviously that's always subject to change, but you know, having something to think, really conscious thinking, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, being aware of what we are putting into our minds so that we can.
Creation is probably the good word. Conscious.
Yes.
Creation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so easy to just end up in this like little habitual thought pattern that spirals us down. It doesn't need to. We can spiral ourselves up as well, as easily as we can spiral ourselves down.
Have a big cry, don't unpack and live there, and try to get out of bed and have a shower and go on.
Yeah, literally, I set myself a timer.
Get all the emotions out, and then
because like I've had a couple of moments over the last 48 hours or so, and I literally set myself a timer and went, right, by 5:30 I'm done. And you just let it all out so that it can be, because the emotions are there, they need to be released.
So, acknowledgement, and 100%.
Suppressing them doesn't help anything, but living in them doesn't help either.
No, that's exactly. So it's not easy, but you know, sometimes a little bit of chocolate helps me, and maybe, you know, a lot, but whatever. Coffee,
coffee in the morning, chocolate in the night time.
No, I'm just but it's learning. It's a journey. I do always just strive to learn more and do better and be better, and I love that though. Definitely remember that thoughts are things, because it's a simple thing that you can like talk about and unpack for hours and hours and hours if you chose to. But just keeping it simple though is always a good thing for people to be able to remember it. Yeah.
So it's awesome. Thank you so much for jumping in today and being willing to jump in and say hello and have a chat. Please, so this has been shared across into my Facebook profile. It'll go across to my business page and also into my group, possibly some other places, but go into the one that's on my profile and drop your link so that people can find you, please, because I know that there will be people who will ask questions. And I would assume that even if people are not in the construction industry but know that they need some safety help, you might be able to send them in the right direction of other.
Want to give me a call, and I love to have a chat, so you know, you can give me a call, and if I can't help, I can help you know where you might need to go. Sometimes I do help people outside of construction. I do a lot of cleaners and stuff as well, so if you give me a call, we can have a chat and work out what you might need and where you could go for help. So it's not always, I know people who want to do NDIS, like there are businesses who have specific NDIS procedures, so I can't do it cheaper or better than that, so I might refer you, but it just depends on the situation, I guess.
Yep. Awesome. And like you said, it starts with a conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So
awesome. Thank you so much. And for those of you who are on Facebook, make sure that you have a chat with Kelly when you have some questions around your safety. But for now, I'm going to say thank you again for joining me, and it's bye from me.
See ya.